Every year, hundreds of retirees set out on the Great Loop. Same waterway, same 6,000 miles, same dream. But here is what almost nobody tells you before you leave the dock. The boats that finish and the boats that don't are not separated by budget. They are not separated by experience. They are not even separated by how carefully the owner prepared. They are separated by one thing: hull design. And by the time most first-time buyers understand why that matters, they are already 800 miles from home, burning twice the fuel they budgeted, watching a trawler they dismissed as slow and unglamorous pull effortlessly into the next anchorage, while they calculate whether they can afford to keep going. Today, we are going to talk about the boat type that completes the Great Loop consistently, comfortably, and with his budget, and the boat type that starts the loop confidently and quietly, falls apart somewhere in the middle. Stay with me all the way through, because the second half of this video contains the detail that most buyers only learn the hard way. And by the end, you are going to look at every boat listing differently than you did before you pressed play.
Before we get into the boats themselves, you need to understand what the Great Loop actually asks of a vessel, because most buyers get this wrong before they ever start shopping. The Great Loop is roughly 6,000 miles of connected American waterway. Rivers, canals, lakes, bays, and coastal passages linking the Atlantic, the Gulf of Mexico, the Mississippi River system, and the Great Lakes into a single navigable route. Most people take 1 to 2 years to complete it. Some never finish because they find a harbor they cannot bring themselves to leave. Now, here is the part that matters for everything that follows. The Great Loop does not happen at speed. Lock systems on the Erie Canal, no-wake zones through river towns, canal restrictions, shallow passages, commercial traffic, the entire rhythm of the journey unfolds at somewhere between 7 and 10 knots. Not 20 knots, not 30, 7 to 10. That single fact determines everything about which boats succeed and which boats fail. Because there are two fundamentally different ways to design a boat hull, and they behave completely differently at 7 to 10 knots.
The first is a planing hull. A planing hull is designed to rise up onto the surface of the water at speed. Below a certain threshold, typically somewhere around 15 to 18 knots for most designs, a planing hull sits in the water inefficiently, pushing a large bow wave, burning fuel without delivering the performance it was built around. Above that threshold, the hull lifts. Resistance drops. The boat does what it was designed to do. At 25 knots, a planing hull is genuinely impressive, responsive, fuel-efficient relative to its speed, and exactly in its design envelope. Express cruisers, performance motor yachts, sportfish convertibles, these are planing hull boats. Built for speed, optimized for speed, and only truly efficient at speed. The second type is a displacement hull. A displacement hull moves through the water at all times. It does not plane. It does not lift. It pushes through the surface at a steady, deliberate pace, typically 7 to 10 knots. And at those speeds, its resistance characteristics are as favorable as any hull design in existence. The Grand Banks 36, the DeFever 44, the Nordhaven 40. At 8 knots, these boats are operating exactly where they were designed to operate. The engine is comfortable, the fuel consumption is predictable, the hull is doing precisely what the designer intended. Then there is a middle category, semi-displacement hulls. Designs like the Mainship 34 and the Nordic Tug 32 sit between these two worlds. They can push faster than a pure displacement hull when conditions call for it, but they are optimized for the 7 to 10 knot range that the loop demands. More versatile than a pure displacement design. More efficient than a planing hull at loop speeds. The loop is displacement territory. That sentence contains most of what you need to understand before we go any further.
Now let us talk about what actually happens when a planing hull boat attempts the Great Loop. And I want to be careful here, because this is not a condemnation of planing hull boats. A Formula 40 running offshore at 30 knots is doing exactly what it was designed to do.
A Sea Ray Sundancer 400 crossing a calm bay at 20 knots is a genuinely capable, beautifully designed vessel in its intended environment. These are not bad boats. They are wrong boats for this particular journey. And the difference reveals itself slowly, in layers, in a way that makes it especially difficult to anticipate from the planning stage. Layer 1 is fuel. A displacement trawler at 8 knots burns somewhere between 1.5 and 3 gallons per hour, depending on the vessel. A planing hull boat at the same speed, held below plane, pushing a heavy bow wave, burns 3 to 4 times that amount, sometimes more. The engine on a planing hull was calibrated for a specific speed range. Below that range, it operates inefficiently. The boat is essentially working harder than it needs to while delivering less than it was designed to. Over 6,000 miles, that difference is not rounding error. It is thousands of dollars. Loopers in Mainship 34s and Nordic Tugs are spending meaningfully less at every fuel dock. The gap accumulates across the journey in a way that reshapes the entire financial picture of the trip. Layer 2 is the physical experience of the boat. Here is something no specification sheet captures. A displacement hull at 7 to 10 knots moves through the water with a particular quality of motion. Steady, deliberate, settled. The boat feels at home at that pace. It does not feel like it is being held back. It does not feel like it is straining. It feels like it is doing exactly what it was built to do. A planing hull at the same speed feels different. It sits lower in the water than it wants to. The bow is heavier than it would be at speed. In a following sea or beam swell, the motion is less predictable than the hull was designed for at its intended operating range. It is subtle, but it is real. And after 3 months on the Tennessee River and the Gulf Coast, subtle becomes significant.
Layer 3 is the psychological shift that almost nobody anticipates when asked about planing hull boats on the loop. Something changes around the 2nd or 3rd month. It happens gradually, often on the Tennessee River or along the Gulf Coast, and it catches most people off guard. The urgency dissolves. Nobody is racing. The next stop will still be there tomorrow. The passage itself, the light on the water, the changing shoreline, the conversations with other loopers on the radio, becomes more interesting than arrival. Speed, which once felt like the most important feature a boat could have, quietly stops mattering. And at that point, the owner of a planing hull boat confronts a calculation with no comfortable answer. They are paying every day, in fuel, in wear, in the constant low-level friction of operating outside the design envelope, for 30-knot capability they have not used in months.
One looper described it this way. He said it felt like owning a thoroughbred horse and spending a year walking it. The horse was magnificent. Walking was simply not what the horse was for. He stopped in Kentucky, stored the boat, flew home, bought a Mainship 390, and finished the loop the following year. He said the Mainship taught him something the planing hull never could. There is a specific pleasure available only to a boat doing exactly what it was designed to do, in exactly the conditions it was designed for. 8 knots on the Tennessee River in a displacement trawler feels right in a way that 8 knots in a 30-knot boat never quite does. Now let us talk about the boats that finish. Because this is not just a story about what fails. It is a story about what works and why, and what that means for anyone still in the planning stage. The Mainship 34 Trawler. Spend any time in Great Loop communities, forums, marina docks, looper rendezvous events, and the Mainship 34 comes up so consistently that veterans have given it a name. They call it the loop boat. Not because it is the most luxurious vessel on the water. Not because it is the fastest. Because it does everything the loop demands and almost nothing it does not. Single Yanmar diesel, 2 to 3 miles per gallon. 13 feet of air draft, low enough to pass under fixed bridges along most of the loop route without anxiety or schedule planning. Fly bridge for good weather, comfortable salon and galley for the days that are not. A couple can handle it alone.
It fits the small river town docks that define the experience at its best. And the community of Mainship 34 owners on the loop is one of the strongest on the water, which has genuine practical value across 6,000 miles. Prices typically run $40,000 to $100,000, one of the most accessible serious loop boats in the current market.
The Nordic Tug 32, the boat that serious loopers recommend to first-timers, not because it is the most impressive vessel on the water, because it is the most honest. Single diesel, typically a lugger or Yanmar, 2 to 3 miles per gallon. Enclosed pilot house, the feature veterans mention first because running the boat in cold weather, rain, or on long passages is a fundamentally different experience from an open flybridge. Across multiple seasons and thousands of miles, that enclosed helm changes the quality of the journey. The Nordic Tug 32 also accesses waterways and harbors that larger, taller boats must route around. On a journey as varied as the Great Loop, that flexibility matters. The Grand Banks 36 Classic, the gold standard against which every other loop trawler gets measured. Full displacement hull, Ford Lehman diesel sipping fuel at displacement speeds. Teak interior built to a standard the current market has largely forgotten how to produce. A well-maintained Grand Banks from 1978 is often mechanically more trustworthy than a newer boat maintained less carefully. And it holds its value better than almost any comparable vessel in the classic trawler category. For a retiree making a significant purchase decision, the knowledge that this boat retains its value, that it is an asset rather than a liability, changes the entire risk calculation. What these three boats share is not brand. It is not age. It is not price. It is design philosophy. They were built for distance. They were built for exactly the speed range the loop demands. And when you put them on the Tennessee River at 8 knots, they feel right in a way that no planing hull at the same speed ever quite achieves. Here is where most videos on this topic end. But I want to stay with this for one more moment, because there is something that experienced loopers return to consistently that goes beyond fuel economy and hull efficiency. The boats that finish the Great Loop are not just mechanically suited to the journey. They allow the journey to become what it is supposed to be. When the boat is doing exactly what it was designed to do, it disappears into the background. You stop thinking about the boat. You start thinking about the places, the people, the anchorages, the way the landscape shifts around you over weeks, river bluffs giving way to Tennessee countryside, the Gulf Coast opening up, the Florida Keys, the Atlantic seaboard turning north as the seasons change. The planing hull owner thinks about the boat every single day. The fuel, the inefficiency, the gap between what the vessel was designed for and what it is being asked to do. The displacement trawler owner stops thinking about the boat somewhere around week 3. That difference between a journey dominated by the boat and a journey made possible by it is the real reason experienced loopers give the same answer so consistently. It is not that planing hull boats are inferior. It is that the loop rewards boats built for distance, and the difference is felt every day, in the quality of the passage, in the financial reality at every fuel dock, and in the quiet satisfaction of a boat operating precisely within its intended purpose. If you are planning the Great Loop, drop a comment below right now. Tell us what boat you are considering, and if you have already made the displacement versus planing decision, tell us what changed your mind. Experienced loopers check in on these conversations regularly. And what comes out of the comments is consistently some of the most useful information on the entire channel. If this video gave you a clearer way to think about this decision, hit the like button, subscribe to Boat Sniper, and turn on the notification bell. Every week, we cover real boats, real costs, and the honest side of Great Loop preparation. The water is right there. We will see you in the next one.